My name's Mia, and I'm 21 now, but the memory of 15-year-old me, trembling on that ropes course, still lives in my bones like a scar that aches when it rains. If you met me today, you might not recognize that girl. I've got this kind of quiet confidence people mistake for natural, but it was anything but. I had to build it piece by piece, like stacking bricks with shaking hands. Growing up, though, I was the shy one, the cautious one, the one who clutched the railing on escalators and never joined in on dares. My family didn't make it easy. My dad, Mark, is the kind of man who thinks strength is the only language worth speaking. He grew up tough, made it to the army for a few years, and though he left before I was born, he never really left the mindset. Courage is everything, he'd say. Nobody respects cowards. Guess where that left me? My mom, Linda, is softer, but she hates conflict. She'd squeeze my hand under the dinner table whenever Dad got too harsh, but she'd never speak up against him. Her silence hurt almost as much as his words. And then there was Sarah, my cousin. We were the same age, but we couldn't have been more different. She was bold, loud, and effortlessly fearless, or at least that's how she wanted the world to see her. She'd climb trees, leap off diving boards, crack jokes that made adults gasp, and then beam when everyone clapped. She loved the spotlight. I didn't. When we were little, I thought Sarah was magical. I wanted to be like her so badly it made my chest ache, but she figured that out quickly, and instead of lifting me up, she made me her shadow, her punchline. I can still hear her voice, sharp and sticky sweet. Don't worry, Mia. You stay down here on the ground. I'll reach the stars for both of us. At family gatherings, she was the one doing backflips on the lawn while I sat with my plate of food, pretending I wasn't afraid of choking in front of everyone. At school, she joined every team, every club, while I hid in the library, sketching little doodles of wings in the corners of my notebooks. I didn't tell anyone about the drawings. It felt too private, too embarrassing, like if they knew I secretly wished I could fly, they'd laugh harder than ever. Still, Sarah found ways to expose me. She once grabbed one of my notebooks and waved it in front of our cousins. Look, Mia thinks she's gonna fly away from us. With what? Chicken wings? They all laughed until my ears rang. My parents didn't stop her. My dad actually chuckled, shaking his head. Maybe she should, he said. At least she'd be doing something brave for once. That was the moment I stopped believing home was a safe place. It's funny, when you grow up feeling like you're constantly disappointing the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally, you start building whole worlds inside yourself just to survive. Mine was made of skies and wings. I dreamed of soaring somewhere nobody could touch me, nobody could laugh, somewhere my fear wouldn't be a cage. But dreams alone don't change reality, and reality was harsh. By the time I hit high school, Sarah's reputation was golden. She was the athlete, the risk-taker, the fearless one everyone admired. I was Sarah's cousin, the timid, awkward girl who turned red if you asked her to read aloud. I carried my fear like a neon sign I couldn't switch off. The worst part? Part of me started to believe they were right. Maybe I really was just a coward destined to stay on the ground. Until the day everything shifted. Not because I suddenly found courage. Not because someone saved me, but because humiliation, raw, searing humiliation, forced me to make a choice. And that choice, though tiny at first, set off a chain of events that led to the moment I finally had wings on my back. The thing about family is, you can't escape them. Not really. Not when you live 3 streets away and your parents insist on weekly dinners with your aunt, uncle, and cousins. That meant Sarah. Always Sarah. At those Sunday dinners, the house smelled like roast chicken and lemon cleaner. My aunt's laugh echoed through the kitchen. My uncle poured himself another glass of wine. And Sarah? She held court like she was queen. Everyone leaned in when she spoke, as if her stories mattered more because she told them with so much flair. I always ended up at the corner of the table, picking at mashed potatoes, praying she wouldn't notice me, but she always did. So, Mia, she'd start, flashing that sly smile that made my stomach twist. How's life down there on the ground? The table chuckled. My dad shook his head, amused. Mom's fork paused midair, but she said nothing. One time, when I was 16, she leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, Remember the ropes course? God, that was hilarious. She cried like a baby. The heat in my face burned so bright I thought my skin might peel off. I whispered, "Can you not?" But my voice cracked, and that just fueled her. "Oh, come on, it's funny," she said, grinning at the table. I mean, imagine Mia at a theme park, one roller coaster and she'd probably pass out. Everyone laughed. My uncle even slapped the table. My dad muttered, "She's not wrong." That's how it always went. Sarah spoke. The family laughed. And I shrank smaller and smaller, like if I could just disappear into the chair cushions, maybe they'd forget I existed. It wasn't just family. School was the same. Sarah and I went to the same high school, which meant the teasing followed me there. She had friends everywhere, the kind of friends who orbited her like planets around the sun. And every so often, she'd drop some fun fact about her cousin Mia. She's scared of balloons popping. She can't climb more than 2 rungs on a ladder. She once refused to go on the Ferris wheel because she thought it was too high. Most of it was exaggerated or twisted, but by then, it didn't matter. People believed her. Why wouldn't they? Sarah was confident, magnetic, believable. I was quiet, awkward, and bad at defending myself. I remember sitting alone in the cafeteria one day, staring at my tray of fries, when 2 girls walked past and giggled. One of them whispered just loud enough for me to hear, "Careful, don't drop your food from the table height. Mia might faint." They laughed all the way out the door. I pretended not to hear, pretended I didn't care, but later, in the bathroom stall, I pressed my hands against my ears and let myself cry where no one could see. Here's the thing, humiliation doesn't just hurt in the moment. It lingers, it festers, it becomes part of how you see yourself. And yet, deep down, I started to feel something else growing too. Not just sadness, not just shame, but anger. It wasn't loud, not at first. It was quiet, like a coal glowing in ashes. Every time Sarah smirked at me, every time my dad sighed in disappointment, every time my mom looked away instead of speaking up, the coal glowed hotter. But I didn't know what to do with it. I'd go home after school, lock myself in my room, and sketch pages and pages of wings, big ones, small ones, feathered, metallic, mechanical. I filled notebooks with designs, even though I had no idea how to build them. It was silly, childish even, but it was the only place I felt free. I never showed anyone, not my friends, the few I had, not my parents, definitely not Sarah. It was my secret rebellion. Looking back now, I think that coal of anger was the first spark of something bigger, something that would eventually change everything. But at 16, I just felt trapped. Trapped in a family that thought I was weak. Trapped in a school where my cousin made sure I was the punchline. Trapped on the ground, while everyone else seemed to soar. And I had no idea that soon, humiliation would push me so far that I'd either break completely or finally learn how to fight back. It happened junior year, the day that still makes my chest ache when I think about it. Our school held this annual charity fair, and one of the main attractions was a climbing wall they set up in the gym. $10 got you 3 tries, and all the money went to children's hospitals. Everyone lined up for it. It was fun, competitive, and a chance to show off. Of course, Sarah signed up immediately. She stood there with her little fan club, bouncing on her toes, practically glowing with anticipation. I wasn't going anywhere near it. I'd already decided that before I even walked into the gym. Just being near the wall, towering, neon-colored holds snaking up 20 feet, made my knees weak. But fate had other plans. "Hey, Mia!" Sarah's voice cut through the crowd like a blade. "Why don't you give it a try?" I froze. My stomach plummeted. She smirked. "Oh wait, never mind. You'd probably cry halfway up, right?" Her friends laughed. Others turned to look. Heat climbed up my neck. "I'm not doing it," I muttered, trying to walk away. But Sarah wasn't done. She loved an audience too much. She raised her voice, loud enough for everyone in the gym to hear. Guys, listen. This is my cousin Mia, the one who's afraid of everything. She won't even touch the wall because it's too high." The gym erupted in laughter. Some people clapped. Others whispered. I felt every eye on me, burning into my skin. And then, to make it worse, My dad appeared. He'd volunteered at the fair, helping run booths. He walked up, arms crossed, jaw tight. "She's right," he said flatly. "Mia's always been too scared to try anything." The words sliced deeper than Sarah's ever could, because Sarah was a bully. But Dad? He was supposed to be my protector. The crowd laughed harder. My ears rang, my vision blurred. And then, the part that still makes me wince, I shouted. Not with strength, not with anger, but with desperation. "Fine, I'll do it." The laughter quieted, replaced with curious murmurs. Sarah's grin widened. "Oh, this is gonna be good." They strapped me into the harness. My hands shook so hard I could barely tie the rope. My palms were slick with sweat. My heart hammered like a war drum in my chest. I stepped onto the wall, the holds rough under my fingers. The first few feet weren't so bad. I focused on one move at a time. Right hand, left foot, don't look down. But by the time I was halfway up, my arms burned, my legs wobbled. I glanced down, mistake, and the floor tilted beneath me. The gym stretched like a dizzying cavern. Gasps echoed. Someone whispered, "She's shaking." My throat closed. Tears blurred my vision. I clung to the wall, frozen. And then Sarah's voice rang out. "See? I told you. She's pathetic." Laughter. Again. Always laughter. I couldn't move. My body locked up completely. The instructor called up. "It's okay, Mia. Just let go. We'll lower you down." But letting go felt worse than climbing, because letting go meant proving Sarah right. So I hung there, trembling, until my muscles gave out and my fingers slipped. I screamed. For a moment, the world dropped out from under me. Then the rope caught, jerking me hard, lowering me gently to the mat. But the damage was done. Everyone clapped, not in support, but in mockery. My dad muttered, "Embarrassing." And Sarah? She doubled over, laughing so hard she had tears in her eyes. That night, I locked myself in my room and ripped every wing drawing out of my notebooks, crumpled them, threw them in the trash. "I'll never escape this," I whispered into the dark. Never. But here's the thing about breaking points, sometimes they plant seeds you don't even realize are growing. That night felt like the end, but in a twisted way, it was also the beginning. Because for the first time in my life, humiliation wasn't just pain, it was fuel. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling while the humiliation replayed in my head like a cruel movie I couldn't pause. My body still felt the ache of hanging from that wall, the raw burn in my arms, the sting of slipping, the slam of the mat against my back. But what haunted me most wasn't the fall, it was the laughter. It looped in my ears, loud and merciless. Sarah's cackling, my dad's sigh, even strangers in the gym clapping as if my humiliation was worth celebrating. By 3 a.m., my pillow was damp with tears, and I whispered into the silence, "I hate them, I hate her, I hate me." The words shocked me. I'd never admitted hatred before, not even to myself, but it pulsed hot in my chest, bitter and undeniable. The next morning at breakfast, I couldn't meet my parents' eyes. Mom set a plate of toast in front of me, her lips pressed tight. Dad sat at the table scrolling on his phone, pretending nothing had happened. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Mia, you embarrassed yourself yesterday." I flinched. "You can't just fall apart like that. People are watching. You've got to toughen up." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. I didn't want to do it in the first place. "Then why'd you agree?" His eyes flicked up, sharp and disappointed. Because you and Sarah," my voice cracked. "Because you were laughing at me." Dad set his phone down, leaning forward. "Then prove us wrong. Stop being afraid of everything." The words landed like a slap. Prove us wrong, as if my whole existence was some test I kept failing. Mom finally spoke, softly, "Mark, maybe let it go." But he just shook his head. "The world isn't kind to cowards, Linda. She needs to hear it." I pushed my chair back so hard it scraped the floor. My toast sat untouched. "I don't need to hear anything from you," I whispered, then bolted upstairs before he could respond. I slammed my door, breathing hard, shaking. For once, I wasn't crying. I was furious. I yanked open the trash bin where I'd dumped my drawings the night before. Crumpled pages stared back at me, edges torn, graphite smudged. For a second, I thought about leaving them there, letting that dream die like it deserved. But my hands moved on their own. I pulled the papers out, smoothed them flat on my desk. The wings stared back at me, fragile but defiant. Something shifted in my chest. If Sarah wanted me to stay on the ground, if Dad thought I was weak, maybe I couldn't change their minds, but maybe, just maybe, I could prove it to myself. The thought scared me as much as it thrilled me, because proving it meant facing the one thing I feared most, heights. I sat down, pencil in hand, and sketched until the sun rose. Not just wings this time, plans, ideas, how I might train myself, little by little, to stop letting fear control me. When I finally stopped, my desk was covered in diagrams, notes, and messy doodles. My stomach growled, my eyes burned, but for the first time in years, I felt awake. Later that week, I made my first attempt. It wasn't glamorous. I climbed onto the roof of our garage, barely 8 feet high, and stood there shaking like a leaf. The wind tugged at my hair, my knees locked, my heart thudded. "Don't look down," I whispered to myself. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds before I scrambled back down the ladder, legs jelly, palms raw, my whole body hummed with adrenaline. But here's the thing, I hadn't frozen, I hadn't cried, I'd done it, even if it was small. And in that tiny victory, something cracked open inside me. For the first time, I thought, maybe I'm not broken. I didn't tell anyone, not Mom, not Dad, and definitely not Sarah. This was mine, my secret war. Day after day, I went back. I stood on the roof longer, climbed higher trees in the backyard, balanced on ladders until my legs stopped trembling so violently. It wasn't easy. Every time, fear clawed at me, whispering that I'd fall, that I'd fail, that I'd make a fool of myself again. But another voice, faint but growing louder, whispered back, "Keep going." And slowly, painfully, I began to believe it. I didn't know it then, but that was the moment the coal of anger inside me started to burn into something else. Not just rage, not just shame, but fuel. The kind that could one day lift me off the ground. Progress isn't pretty. Nobody tells you that when you decide to change. I thought facing my fear would feel empowering, like in movies where the underdog suddenly transforms overnight. But reality was sweat, trembling hands, and a stomach that lurched every time my feet left the ground. By the time I was 17, I'd upgraded from the garage roof to the old oak tree in our backyard. Its branches reached high, splitting against the sky, perfect for climbing. But every time I got more than 10 feet up, my vision blurred, my chest tightened, my body screamed to get down. Sometimes I pushed through, sometimes I froze and had to inch my way back, shaking so hard I nearly slipped. One afternoon, Dad caught me halfway up the oak. "What the hell are you doing up there?" His voice snapped like a whip. I flinched, gripping the bark until it dug into my palms. I'm practicing," I stammered. "Practicing what? Being reckless?" "I'm trying to get better." He folded his arms, staring up at me with that look, the one that made me feel small. "Better at what? You think climbing trees is going to fix you?" Heat burned my face. "I don't need fixing." His jaw tightened. "Then why are you up there shaking like a leaf? Get down before you break your neck." I climbed down slowly, every movement stiff. When my feet touched the ground, he just shook his head. "You'll never get anywhere if you keep playing pretend." I wanted to scream, to tell him he was wrong, but the words stuck in my throat, heavy and bitter. That night, I sat at my desk staring at my sketches. My hands hovered over the pages. For the first time, I wondered if he was right. The doubt gnawed at me. And Sarah didn't make it easier. At family dinners, she kept up her usual performance. "So, Mia, climbed any ladders lately? Or maybe you should just get wings tattooed, it's safer than trying the real thing." The digs never stopped. My parents didn't defend me. If anything, Dad chuckled at her jokes, and Mom stayed silent. I learned to hide my reactions, smile, shrug, pretend her words bounced off, but inside, every comment was another stone on my chest. School wasn't much better. Sarah had joined cheerleading, which made her even more visible. She'd throw herself into the air during routines while her teammates caught her effortlessly. People adored her fearlessness. And me? I was still the girl who couldn't get through gym class without shaking when we had to climb ropes. The contrast between us felt unbearable. She was everything I wasn't, everything my family wanted me to be. And yet, I couldn't stop climbing that oak tree. Even on nights when I came home exhausted, even when my arms were scraped raw, even when my chest ached with the effort of holding myself together, I kept going. Because the alternative was worse. The alternative was staying the same. But the more I pushed, the more the failures piled up. Once, I slipped and tore open my knee. The blood soaked through my jeans, and I had to limp back inside, making up some excuse about tripping on the sidewalk. Another time, I froze halfway up and couldn't move for nearly an hour. My muscles cramped. My throat went dry. I clung there until the sun dipped below the horizon and I forced myself down, sobbing the whole way. Each setback felt like proof that Sarah was right, that Dad was right, that I was hopeless. But something strange happened too. Every failure carved me a little harder, like a sculptor chipping at stone. It hurt, but underneath, something stronger was starting to take shape. I didn't see it then, not clearly, but looking back, I know that's what was happening. One night, after another miserable family dinner filled with Sarah's taunts, I locked myself in my room and whispered into the darkness, "You'll see. One day, you'll all see." The words felt dangerous, like I wasn't supposed to say them out loud, but once they left my lips, I couldn't take them back. It wasn't just a wish anymore, it was a promise. Hope doesn't always arrive with trumpets. Sometimes, it sneaks in quietly, disguised as something ordinary. For me, it came in the form of a substitute teacher. It was late spring of my junior year. I shuffled into homeroom, still sore from the scrape on my arm after another failed attempt at climbing the oak tree. I'd hidden the cut under my sweater, not wanting to deal with Sarah's commentary. That's when I noticed a stranger standing at the front of the room. He wasn't young, but he wasn't old either, somewhere in that in-between where people seem both grounded and restless at once. His jacket had a patch on the sleeve, U.S. Air Force. "Good morning," he said, his voice steady but warm. "I'm Mr. Thompson. I'll be filling in today." The usual chatter died down quickly. There was something about him, not intimidating, exactly, but commanding. During class, he told us stories, not textbook lessons, but pieces of his life. How he'd grown up in a small town, how nobody thought he'd amount to much, how he'd discovered flying almost by accident, then chased it until it became his entire world. I sat frozen in my seat, my pencil hovering above my notebook. Flying. He was talking about flying. Every word felt like a lifeline being thrown straight at me. When the bell rang, most students filed out without a second thought, but I stayed. My heart pounded, my palms slick. "Mr. Thompson?" My voice cracked. He looked up from the stack of papers he was organizing. "Yes. I wanted to ask, how do you get over fear of heights, I mean?" His eyes softened. He studied me for a long moment, like he was trying to read between the words. "Why do you want to know?" The question caught me off guard. Nobody had ever asked why. They only told me what I couldn't do. I swallowed hard. "Because I want to be in the air. I don't want to be stuck on the ground forever." Something flickered in his expression, surprise, maybe, or recognition. He set the papers aside and leaned closer. "Fear doesn't vanish," he said quietly. "You train until your courage is louder than your fear. That's all flying is. Courage, practiced daily. Courage, practiced daily." The words sank into me like seeds. He told me about the Civil Air Patrol, a volunteer program where teens could learn aviation basics, even get flight training. My chest tightened as he spoke, excitement tangled with terror. Me? Flying? It sounded impossible. And yet, I left class with a brochure tucked under my arm, my head spinning. That night, I sat on my bed staring at it. Sarah was in the next room laughing with friends over the phone. Mom hummed in the kitchen. Dad flipped channels in the living room. None of them knew I was holding the first real step toward the dream they mocked. I traced the outline of a small plane pictured on the brochure. My pulse raced. Could I really do it? Or would I crash and burn before I even began? The doubts came quickly. I wasn't smart enough, brave enough, strong enough. My family would never support me. Sarah would tear me apart if she found out. But beneath the noise, that one line kept replaying in my head. Courage, practiced daily. I whispered it to myself like a prayer. The next week, I signed up. I didn't tell anyone at home. I scraped together the registration fee with babysitting money and the little cash I'd saved from mowing lawns. Walking into the Civil Air Patrol office for the first time felt like stepping into another universe. Posters of jets lined the walls. Flight manuals sat stacked on shelves. A flight simulator blinked in the corner like a promise. I almost turned and ran. My knees trembled, and sweat slid down my back. But then I remembered the oak tree. All those nights I climbed and fell and climbed again. Maybe all that had been leading me here. A woman in uniform greeted me. First time? I nodded, my voice barely a whisper. Yeah, first time. She smiled, handing me a clipboard. Well, welcome. You're about to see the world from a whole new angle. Her words made my chest ache. For the first time in years, I felt something other than fear or shame. I felt possibility. Keeping a secret dream alive feels a lot like juggling fire. At any moment, one slip, and everything could burn. The Civil Air Patrol meetings became my sanctuary. Twice a week, I'd sneak out under the excuse of study group or volunteering. At first, Mom didn't question it. Dad barely noticed. He was too busy with work and TV. Sarah, though, eyed me like a hawk. Study group? She'd smirk. Since when do you even talk to people? I'd just shrug, my stomach twisting, and slip out the door. The first meetings were overwhelming. Kids my age, confident, uniformed, calling out terms I didn't understand. Pitch, yaw, roll, thrust versus drag. They tossed the words around like candy, while I clutched my notebook so hard my knuckles ached. But instead of mocking me, like Sarah would have, they helped. One boy, Jason, slid his manual over during a lesson. Here, he whispered, highlight these, they're always on the quizzes. Another cadet, Elena, grinned when she saw me staring wide-eyed at the flight simulator. Wanna try? My heart pounded so loudly I thought they'd hear it, but I slid into the seat, gripping the joystick like it might bite me. The simulated plane lifted off shakily, bouncing against invisible turbulence. I clenched my jaw, sweat dripping, every part of me screaming that I wasn't ready. The screen flashed red. Crash. Not bad, Elena said, patting my shoulder. Everyone crashes their first time. Everyone, not just me. That night, I lay awake replaying the crash. Instead of shame, there was something else beneath it, determination. I wanted to try again. But keeping the program a secret meant lies piled up fast. Mom asked why I wasn't home for dinner. Sarah asked why I was always out on Tuesdays. Dad eventually grumbled. If this is some boyfriend thing, I'd better not hear about it from your cousins first. I wanted to scream, it's not a boyfriend, it's bigger, it's everything. Instead, I swallowed the truth. The hardest part was the physical training, hiking drills, obstacle courses, survival basics, all the things that reminded me of the girl who froze on the ropes course years ago. My body lagged behind the others. My arms burned, my legs shook. Once, during a timed run, I tripped and skinned my knees raw. I wanted to quit right there, tears stinging my eyes. But then Mr. Thompson's voice echoed in my head. Courage, practiced daily. So I got up. I limped to the finish line, even if I came in dead last. Weeks turned into months. Slowly, I changed. At home, Sarah still mocked me, but her words didn't slice as deep. I had something she didn't know about, a piece of sky tucked into my chest. When she teased, careful, Mia, don't fall off the couch, I just smirked to myself, thinking, if only you knew where I've been. I studied harder than I ever had in my life. Aerodynamics, emergency procedures, navigation. I filled notebooks with diagrams and equations, covering my walls with sticky notes like battle plans. The simulator became my second home. Crash after crash turned into shaky landings. Then smoother flights. The first time I landed without red flashing letters, I nearly cried. Elena clapped me on the back. See? Told you. You're a natural. Natural. Nobody had ever called me that before. But secrets have weight. One night, Dad caught me coming home late. Dirt on my shoes and sweat still on my forehead. Study group. Huh? He said, raising an eyebrow. You don't look like you've been studying. Panic gripped me. My throat closed up. We had a project. Outside. He stared at me for a long moment, suspicion in his eyes. Finally, he just grunted and went back to the TV, but my hands shook for an hour afterward. I realized then how fragile everything was. One slip, and my secret world would shatter. Still, I couldn't stop. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving people's laughter. I was building something, a dream, a self. And the more hours I spent at Civil Air Patrol, the more I felt my fear shifting, not gone, never gone, but tamed, managed, like I had reins on it for once. The girl who froze on ropes courses was still inside me, but now, so was the girl who could pull back on a joystick, heart pounding, and watch a plane rise into the digital sky. And I knew, someday, it wouldn't just be digital. Secrets never stay secrets forever. I should have known that. It was a Saturday afternoon when it happened. I'd just come home from a Civil Air Patrol session, sweaty, exhilarated, my notebook full of new maneuvers and notes from the simulator. I shoved it into my backpack before walking through the front door. Sarah was already there, lounging on the couch, scrolling her phone. She looked up, her eyes narrowing. "Where've you been? You disappear every weekend now." I muttered, "Out." "Out where?" Her tone was sharp, the way it always got when she sensed something worth mocking. "None of your business." I tried to slip past her, but she was quicker. With a smirk, she grabbed my backpack off my shoulder before I could react. "Let's see what secretive Mia is hiding." "Sarah, stop." My voice cracked. I lunged, but she danced back, unzipping it with the speed of a predator tearing open prey. And then it was over. She pulled out the notebook, flipping it open to a page covered in diagrams of plane wings, scribbled checklists, and simulator scores. Her laughter pierced the room like glass shattering. "Oh my God, you, flying? Are you serious?" I froze, my chest hollowing out. She held the notebook high, calling into the kitchen. "Aunt Linda, Uncle Mark, come look at this. Mia thinks she's a pilot." I wanted the ground to swallow me. Mom came in first, drying her hands on a towel, confusion etched on her face. Dad followed, remote in hand. "What's going on?" Dad asked. Sarah slapped the notebook into his hands. "Apparently Mia's been sneaking off to pretend she's Maverick or something." Mom's eyebrows knit together. "Mia?" Dad flipped through the pages, his face unreadable at first. Then he snorted. "Is this a joke?" Heat flooded my cheeks. "It's not a joke. I've been training with the Civil Air Patrol. I want to fly." The room went silent for a beat. Then Dad barked out a laugh so cruel it made my stomach twist. "You, Miss Afraid of Heights? You can't even climb a ladder without crying. What makes you think you can fly a plane?" Sarah cackled beside him. "I told you. Isn't it hilarious? She's been sneaking around like she's in Top Gun." Tears stung my eyes, but anger pushed up through them like fire. "I'm not sneaking for fun. I'm working for this. I'm not who you think I am anymore." But Dad just shook his head, tossing the notebook onto the table. "This is a waste of time. You'll never make it. Better quit now before you embarrass yourself and us even more." Mom's lips parted like she wanted to say something, but then she closed them again. Silence, as always. That silence cut deeper than Dad's words. I grabbed the notebook, hugging it to my chest. "You don't get to decide what I can or can't do anymore." My voice trembled, but I forced the words out. "I'm not quitting." Sarah rolled her eyes, smirking. "Sure, Mia. Can't wait to watch you crash." Literally. I stormed out of the living room before they could see me cry. My hands shook as I slammed my bedroom door and pressed my back against it. Humiliation burned hot in my chest, but beneath it, something else was there too. Resolve. For years, I'd let Sarah's laughter and Dad's disappointment define me. I'd shrunk. I'd hidden. I'd believed their voices over my own. But not this time. Their mockery didn't crush me, it hardened me. That night, I pulled out my notebook and wrote 3 words across the last page in thick, angry letters. Watch me fly. The day that changed everything started like any other, cloudy, heavy, ordinary, but by nightfall, my entire world had split open. Civil Air Patrol had organized a public event, families invited, local reporters covering, cadets demonstrating skills. I almost skipped it. The thought of Dad and Sarah standing in the crowd, smirking as I stumbled, made me sick. But when I looked at the uniform hanging on my door, crisp and clean, something inside whispered, "This is the day you take back your sky." So I went. The hangar buzzed with activity, cadets polishing displays, officers shaking hands with parents, the smell of jet fuel faint in the air. My stomach twisted into knots, every step felt like walking into a trap. And then I saw them, Dad, arms crossed, jaw tight, Mom, fidgeting with her purse strap, Sarah, phone in hand, eyes gleaming like she'd come just for the show of me failing. Their presence felt like a weight pressing down on my chest. For a moment, I wanted to run, to vanish into the bathroom and never come out. But then Jason spotted me. "Mia, you're up for the simulator demo." My knees went weak. The simulator was set up on stage, connected to a giant screen so the whole crowd could watch every move. Of course, the universe wasn't just testing me, it was putting me under a spotlight. Sarah's laughter echoed in my head, Dad's voice, coward, my own pulse roared in my ears. I climbed onto the stage, my boots heavy, sliding into the seat. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the joystick. The officer announced, "Cadet Mia will now demonstrate a takeoff, controlled flight, and landing." The crowd murmured. My dad's cough cut through the noise like a gunshot. The screen lit up, runway stretching out before me, the simulated cockpit glowing. "Breathe," I whispered to myself. Courage, practiced daily. I pushed the throttle. The engines roared in my headphones. The plane lurched forward. The runway blurred past. Faster, faster, then I pulled back. And for a split second, the old fear surged, threatening to freeze me. You'll fall, you'll crash, you'll never. But then the nose lifted, the horizon tilted, and suddenly, impossibly, I was climbing. The crowd gasped as the digital plane soared into the sky. My hands steadied, my breathing slowed, the chaos in my chest melted into something I'd never felt before, control. I banked left, then right, the wings cutting smooth arcs against the simulated clouds. The joystick moved like an extension of my own body. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the girl who froze on ropes or clung to ladders. I was the girl flying. Minutes passed like seconds. The officer's voice guided me toward landing. The ground rushed up, the hardest part. My palms slicked with sweat. But I adjusted, corrected, eased the plane down. The wheels touched the runway. Smooth, clean. The word "successful" flashed across the giant screen. The crowd erupted into applause. I ripped off the headset, my chest heaving, tears blurring my vision. The sound of clapping filled the hangar, but louder still was the silence from the one corner I looked at first. Dad, his arms no longer crossed, his eyes locked on me, wide, stunned. Sarah's phone hung forgotten in her hand, her mouth actually open, for once without a snide remark. Mom's eyes shone with tears. I stood from the simulator, my legs trembling, and saluted the officer, though really, it felt like I was saluting every version of myself that had ever been told she couldn't. For the first time, I wasn't ashamed of my dream, I was living it. And they all saw it. Not in secret, not in hiding. Out loud, on a screen bigger than life. With wings they could never take from me. After that day in the hangar, nothing looked the same. Dad didn't suddenly turn into a cheerleader, and Sarah didn't stop being Sarah overnight, but there was a silence around them whenever I walked into the room now, not the silence of dismissal, but of disbelief, of realization that the box they'd stuffed me in was too small to hold me anymore. Mom hugged me that night, longer than she had in years. She whispered, "I'm proud of you," like it was a secret she'd been keeping locked away. Sarah didn't congratulate me, but for weeks, she avoided eye contact. And honestly, that was victory enough. The biggest change wasn't in them, it was in me. For years, I let their voices drown mine out. I let their laughter carve scars into me. I believed fear made me weak, unworthy, broken. But fear was never the enemy. Fear was my training ground. Every shaky step, every trembling climb, every crash prepared me for the moment I proved myself. Not to them. To me. Because the truth is, not everyone will believe in your dream. Not everyone will clap when you succeed. Sometimes the people you love most will be the loudest voices telling you that you can't. But the lesson I learned, the one I want anyone reading this to hear, is that courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is choosing to move anyway, even when your knees shake and your heart screams to run. I'm still afraid of heights, believe it or not. My stomach still flips when I climb into a cockpit. My palms still sweat before every flight. But now, when the fear comes, I smile, because I know what comes next. Wings. And once you've felt the sky, nobody's laughter, nobody's doubt, nobody's cruelty can chain you to the ground again. So if you take anything from my story, let it be this: don't wait for permission to fly. Don't wait for silence to chase your dream. Let your fear come with you, but don't let it drive. Because one day, the world will look up and see you soaring. And the ones who doubt,